started. So I'm Christina Harrington. I am your go-to person for the Farm to Community Food Hubs grant program at the office Farm to Fork in the California Department of Food and Agriculture. This is one of 3 public webinars we're hosting as part of this public comment period. So we also have a meeting on Thursday in the morning, and we have another one December 3rd in the evening. But what we're presenting here today is the same thing we're sharing at those meetings too. And right now we are in a public comment period for the draft request for application, and the draft RFA and other grant documents are on our website right now, so you can check those out too. And the application won't be open until early next year, but we would love to hear your feedback on what we've proposed so far for this grant program. And so a public comment period is really a time for dialogue between CDFA and all of you. We really want to hear your feedback on what we've proposed for the grant program so far. So we won't have time to go over every single part of the draft request for application today, but I do encourage you all to check it out in more details after today. And there's also draft application questions on there, the draft scorecard, and other things as well. So we'd love to hear your thoughts about all of it. But the way you submit a public comment is by attending one of these virtual sessions. So today, anything you put in the chat, or later on when we do questions and answers, you'll have a chance to unmute if you like as well. But you can also write in your comments. We have an online survey right now. The link is on the presentation, or you can scan that QR code. But if you have a public comment letter, like a Word doc or a PDF, you can't upload it on the survey. So you'll just have to email that in to us. And our email address is on the slide right here. So just apologies in advance. I'm also going to be talking to you for about the next 40-ish minutes or so, but we will have time at the end for questions and to hear any thoughts you might have. So a helpful comment, this is really here, it's just so we actually capture really what you're thinking for any feedback you might have. So really helpful comments are ones that are specific, they relate to certain parts of the draft request for application or the other draft grant documents, and they offer solutions or alternatives. So on the left, you see an example of a comment. The award amount for track blank is too low for us. Please change. So it's a comment, but it doesn't give us a whole lot to work with. We really want to better understand what you mean by that. So an example of a more helpful version is the maximum award amount for track blank is too low based on current infrastructure costs. A more helpful award amount would be X number of dollars. This would enable our organization to do X, Y, or Z. And then I'm going to pause for.
Christina, yeah, do you mind going a little bit slower for the Spanish translator?
Thank
Yes.
you, Andy. Thank you. I'm going to share the website where you can find all this information that I'm talking about. I've been saying draft requests for application, draft materials. So this is our website, and here you'll see time for public comments. This is the draft request for application. So this is the document that we'll be going over key parts of today. It's the rules and the guidance for the grant program, but you'll also see other documents here. So you see here, we're proposing 2 tracks. We'll go over the details of that today, but you see the draft application questions and the scorecard for track 1, and you also see the draft application and scorecard for track 2. These other documents are the draft templates we would offer applicants as well. So all of these documents are open for your feedback as well. And then for the public comments, when you click this link here, you'll see our online survey where you can submit written comments after today as well. It's just a short form there. Okay. So as I go throughout the presentation today, and even as you read the documents after today, these are just some questions for you to consider as you read through things or here today. So how can we clarify things? How can we simplify things? How can we better help applicants? What parts seem infeasible? What language can we include to make sure that the program better reflects the work being led by California Native American tribes, and then how can we create lasting impact for this grant program as well and for food hubs. And then throughout the slides, you're going to see a couple of icons. So the blue one that looks like a building is going to indicate what parts are actually required by California legislation. So the legislation did create the Farm to Community Food Hubs grant program. And so there's certain things that we have to do or we have to align with. So things like the program purpose, prioritizing the creation of new community food hubs, the types of food producers and buyers that community food hubs should be prioritizing as part of their projects. And then the legislation creates the option for us to provide the grant program in two phases, where the first phase would be planning grants only, and the second phase would be infrastructure and operation grants, with a priority for phase one grantees. So legislation gives us the option to create the program this way, but we are not opting to do that as part of the program. And then you'll also see sometimes an icon, this yellow person with a creative idea. So those are really the parts that we're really interested in hearing your thoughts about and your feedback on, because those are the things that we've designed. So there's more flexibility and more opportunities for creativity. So things like how we've defined different words like community food hub, who's eligible to apply, any of the funding track details like the funding award amounts, the application questions and the scoring criteria, and support that we offer applicants. And sometimes you'll see both of those icons on the same slide. So that's just going to tell you there's a little bit of both, a little bit of what legislation requires and a little bit of something that we've designed. Okay, so the purpose of the program is to incentivize the creation and permanency of public serving, aggregation, and distribution enterprises by investing in planning activities and piloting investments in the capital aggregation and distribution infrastructure that's needed to increase purchasing of local, environmentally sustainable, climate smart, and equitably produced food by schools and other institutions to build a better food system economy, to support the local farming and indigenous food production economies, to accelerate climate adaptation and resilience, and to employ food system workers with fair wages and working conditions. So this slide here is really kind of the North Star for the whole program, meaning that all the projects that end up being selected for award should in some way or another help feed into helping us achieve these goals. And so we have up to $14.4 million for the entire program. And of that pot of money, we'll be funding both planning and infrastructure and operations for community food hubs. And again, we're proposing to provide this as a one-phase program, meaning we would award those planning and infrastructure funds at the same time. And this is one-time funding from California's general fund. So that's one of the many reasons why we want to make sure that this has really lasting impact for community food hubs throughout all of California. And CDFA has been investing in food hubs through other programs already, like Farm to School Incubator Grant Program, Healthy Refrigeration Grant Program, and Specialty Crop Block Program. So this opportunity is really for us to invest deeper into community food hubs, having organizations access capital that really gives them the opportunity to plan new initiatives or to get a new food hub up and running or to expand a capacity in order to really accelerate more purchasing of local food by our institutions. So some of the priorities for the program are here on the slide. So all the projects have to demonstrate how they will serve California food producers. And the Food Hub project has to prioritize food producers that operate on 500 acres or less, those that are cooperatively owned, those that are using sustainable or climate smart ag practices, those that are following state labor practices, and food producers who are socially disadvantaged, veterans, disabled, beginning farmers or ranchers, or limited resource farmers or ranchers. And the projects have to prioritize distributing food to public institutions and nonprofit organizations, especially public schools, food banks, and other food distribution nonprofit organizations. And I want to note that in the draft RFA, you'll see a list of institutions that we consider public institutions, and those do include several tribal institutions. And I also want to note that while the projects have to prioritize distributing to public institutions and nonprofits, projects can also serve private institutions like private universities or for-profit grocery retail. And then lastly, projects have to demonstrate how they will cultivate and maintain financial sustainability. And then, per legislation, there's a priority for creating or expanding new community food hubs, and I'll define what that means on a later slide. And then we're setting aside up to 10% of funding for California Native American tribes and tribal serving nonprofits. And then we have proposed a priority for projects that demonstrate they will be producer-led community food hubs, and I'll define what that means later on. So we have proposed to define community food hub as an organization or business that serves as a supply chain intermediary by providing aggregation, distribution, or marketing services for local or regional California food producers to strengthen food producers' ability to reach wholesale, retail, and institutional markets. And so these organizations, they could use warehouses or other centrally located facilities, or they can aggregate more informally by virtually coordinating those supply chain activities for multiple food producers. And for the purpose of this program, community food hubs have to be able to identify the source of 100% of the food products that it sells as part of the project. And then for those that are wondering, okay, community food hub needs to serve food producers. What do we mean by food producers? So we define a food producer as a person, group of people, a nonprofit, or a tribe that's cultivating crops, raising livestock, using indigenous food production practices on the land that they're using, or is a California seafood harvester. So a sneak peek, we'll dive into the details of each of these tracks soon, but we're proposing two tracks, where the first one would be planning and piloting with an award amount between $50,000 and $250,000. The project can last up to 24 months. And then track two, infrastructure and operations, would have an award amount between $500,000 and $2 million. And the project can last up to 60 months or 5 years. We are not asking for any matching dollar amount for either track. We would fund 100% of the requested amount. And then an entity can only be a lead applicant for one track. They can't apply to both. And then if an applicant has received other state or federal grants before, that's okay. They can still apply to the program. Okay, so getting into a little bit about who is eligible to apply. I'm going to talk about this in a couple of parts. The next slide, I'm going to go into more of the details about the legal entities that are allowed to apply. But essentially, most types of entities can apply to either track as long as they're developing a new community food hub or expanding the capacity of a developed community food hub. And what we mean by that is a new community food hub is an entity that has either never conducted community food hub operations or has been conducting operations and had an average annual gross cash income of $1 million or less during the last 3 years. By contrast, a developed community food hub is one that had an average annual gross cash income between $1,001 and $5 million the last 3 years. So more specifically, the legal entities that are allowed to apply are the ones under the green check mark. So food and ag related businesses, so a farming business, ranching business, seafood business can apply. Nonprofit organizations, California's public school districts, California county offices of education, cooperative businesses, certified B corporations, California Native American tribes, tribal schools, tribal serving nonprofit organizations, resource conservation districts, and public institutions of higher education like University of California or California State Universities. Entities that cannot apply are under the red X, so individuals, private schools, other local, state, and federal entities. And then this is important. So food hubs, aggregators, and distributors that don't meet our proposed definitions of new community food hub or developed community food hub would not be able to apply. So because of how we've proposed defining developed community food hub, that would mean that food hubs with an average annual gross cash income greater than 5 million during the last 3 years are not eligible to apply to the program.
Christina, just a little slower if you can for the Spanish channel, and then maybe just pausing a little bit between slides for the Spanish.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so last part about who's eligible to apply. For track one, planning and piloting. So if the community food hub is currently operating, the owner of that food hub has to be the lead applicant. But if the community food hub does not currently exist, the lead applicant does not necessarily need to be the expected owner. So where that might be important for some people is, let's say there is a public school district and some farmers and a nonprofit, and they want to collaborate to plan a new food hub. Either one of those entities, the school district, the farmer, or the nonprofit, they could be the lead applicant, and that won't necessarily imply or lock them into being the owner of the food hub. They can figure that out during the planning process. But by contrast, track two applicants, the owner of the community food hub must be the lead applicant. That's where you're starting to implement the operations. Okay, we're gonna move on to some of the details for track one, planning and piloting. So the purpose is to develop one or more plans and pilot certain activities related to those plans that supports the development of a new community food hub or expands the capacity of a developed community food hub. Again, the award amount is $50,000 to $250,000, and the project can last up to 24 months or 2 years. There's some examples here on the screen of what these plans could be. There's more examples in the draft RFA, but some examples are feasibility studies, business plans, site design and engineering plans in preparation for construction, marketing strategies, financial planning, and others. But then when I say you can pilot certain activities, what that means is that track one applicants would have the option to pilot a new process or strategy or operation that will directly benefit or advance the planning process. So the purpose of piloting activities is not to launch long-term, full-scale operations, but to help support the planning process itself. So, for example, a project is developing a business plan for a new community food hub. The project will pilot early stage operations by sourcing from local producers and selling to a public school. That sales data then will directly support financial projections and product pricing for the business plan. So there needs to be this strong connection between the why of the piloting activities and the what of the plan. So, for using funds in track one, folks can use it for almost anything that they would need that's necessary and reasonable to meet project goals. So there's a lot more examples of allowable costs and not non-allowable costs in the draft RFA, but some examples are paying your project team for the work that they're doing, outreach related costs like renting venues or purchasing food for any events you might have, or paying farmers stipends for participating in workshops, paying consultants and contractors that you might have as part of the project, software you might need for mapping or surveying, and travel costs. And then piloting activities are different. So the costs that are allowed are different as well. So piloting activities, again, is an optional piece that track one applicants can include. And if they do, those costs can only be 20% of direct costs for the whole project. And the only allowed costs are food safety certification and training, refrigerated vans, coolers and other food storage equipment, food packaging supplies, any construction costs that might be necessary to implement pilot activities. So, for example, if someone needs to upgrade their electrical system to install a new piece of equipment, that could be allowed. Rental fees for kitchen or food processing facilities to test the development of lightly processed or value added food products. And then, of course, paying wages for people that are working on the piloting activities. And then there are certain costs that are not allowed for track one. So, for example, plans that are directly related to agricultural production or farm certifications. So, things like carbon farm plans or conservation plans. And then costs related to direct to consumer food distribution are also not allowed. And actually, they're not allowed for the whole program. Again, the purpose of the grant program is to increase purchasing of local food by institutions. And so direct to consumer food distribution, we believe, falls outside of that scope. And then indirect costs can be up to 30% of the total direct costs. With the exception of UC and CSU applicants, they would use their negotiated rates with CDFA. Okay. So when it comes to scoring applications, what would we do? So we don't have time to go into every detail of the application or scoring criteria, but the draft versions of all of that are on the website right now. So you can check those out and we definitely welcome your thoughts about it. But I'll go over some key points. So you're looking at the scorecard for track one. Each line on this table represents a section of the application and how many points would be awarded for each one. And so more points will be available for projects that are developing new community food hubs. So you'll see there's 5 points for that. There's also more points for projects that serve food producers that the program prioritizes. So, for example, if the project is prioritizing food producers that operate on 500 acres or less, or socially disadvantaged food producers, etc., they would receive more points for that. And then more points would be available for projects that demonstrate they will be producer-led community food hubs. And what we mean by that is a community food hub where California food producers are the owners, operators, or decision makers. The food producers have decision-making roles that directly affect the planning, design, or operations of the community food hub. And they can use any legal business structure. It doesn't necessarily need to be a cooperative or not. And then I'll note for letters of support for track one, we're proposing people to submit 3 letters of support from organizations that support the project. Going into now more details for track two, infrastructure and operations. So the purpose is to cover infrastructure and operating costs to establish or expand capacity for a new community food hub or to expand capacity of a developed community food hub. And the award amount again is $500,000 to $2 million, and the project can last up to 60 months or 5 years. Some examples of how folks could use this track is to purchase land and construct facilities like warehouses or food processing facilities, increasing storage, food processing, or transportation capacity, engaging, educating, and training food producer vendors to help increase their capacity to sell to the food hub. So things like food safety training, for example. And then establishing partnerships and operations for inter-food hub trading and sales. So these are just examples, but there's more in the draft RFA. And then track two applicants can use the funds for almost anything that's needed, that's necessary and reasonable to meet project goals. So many more examples in the draft RFA, but here's some here. So examples of allowed costs are paying the project team for the work that they do, purchasing and leasing land, which can be up to 75% of direct costs, any construction costs, refrigerated vans and trucks, food storage equipment, food processing equipment, costs related to training food producers, paying contractors and consultants, any software that might be needed for inventory and sales, and a lot others. And examples of costs that are not allowed are, again, costs related to direct-to-consumer food distribution and any incorporation fees or business license fees related to organizing a business. And then for indirect costs, the same for same as track 1, so up to 30% of total direct costs unless you're a UC or CSU applicant. Okay, so here is track 2 scorecard. Again, all the details of this application and scoring criteria are on the website right now. So some highlights. Just like track 1, there would be more points available for projects developing new community food hubs. So you would receive 5 points for that. There would be more points that demonstrate how they will be producer-led community food hubs. Projects would receive more points for more food producers that they're serving as part of the project. And then applications would receive more points for serving a public institution or a nonprofit organization buyer. Okay, and then letters of support is very different from track 1. So again, track 1, we're just asking for 3 signed letters from any group that supports the project. But for track 2, we're asking for 6 signed letter of support forms from the following groups. And this letter of support form, the draft, is on the website right now if you want to check that out right now or later. But we would be asking for 2 of these forms from food producers interested in selling to the food hub, 2 forms from public institutions or nonprofits interested in buying from the food hub, 1 form from an organization with business or economic development experience, and then 1 form from a food system supporter. So that could be another food producer, it could be another buyer, it could be a tribe that you're working with, or it could be a food systems nonprofit. It's kind of a wild card. And then the asterisk is just indicating that if an applicant is a tribal serving organization, they need to make sure that each tribe that they're serving as part of the project includes a letter of support. And that's true for both track 1 and track 2. Okay, so talking about now how we would support applicants during the application period, which we expect to be open early next year. So we would, during the application period, host virtual office hours twice every month. So kind of something like today where people can come on Zoom, ask their questions, I help them through any issues that they might be having. Of course, we're always there to answer questions sent to our email inbox. We will update frequently asked questions on our website over time. And then something new we're proposing is to review draft application materials for up to 20 applicants who are either a California Native American tribe, a tribal serving nonprofit, or a food producer that identifies as either socially disadvantaged, a beginning farmer, limited resource farmer, veteran, or disabled. And this would look like before submitting an application for formal scoring by CDFA, these applicants can reach out and set up a time with me, and we will go through whatever they've prepared so far, and I will provide them feedback and guidance on how they can improve their application before they submit it for formal scoring. And so this would not look like me writing any applications, but really just providing feedback and guidance on what people have created themselves. And for anyone that may participate in this additional assistance, it will not guarantee that their application is selected for an award. We have to make sure that we maintain the integrity of this competitive grant process. I won't even be scoring their application if I provide feedback on their draft. And then if anyone needs language interpretation to receive this additional assistance, they can ask for that. We'll provide that for free, but all the applications must be submitted in English in order to be scored. Okay, so looking ahead, again, public comments for the draft are due December 6th, just before midnight. Today is the first of three sessions we're offering to hear people's feedback. So the next one will be this Thursday in the morning. It is intended for tribes and tribal serving nonprofits, but it's a public meeting. And then our last one will be the week after Thanksgiving, December 3rd at 5. And then once the public comment period closes, we're going to review all the public comments and make updates as needed. And we would expect to open the application early winter of next year. And along when we open the application, we'll be posting all the public comments and our responses to it as well. And then we expect to announce the selected projects of spring next year, and then expect the projects can begin in the summertime. So for anyone that wants to learn more, again, all the draft grant documents are on the website. You can go to our website and check those out. And you can submit your comment in the chat today, or you can submit it on our online survey. There, the link is on the slide, or you can scan the QR code. If you have a public comment letter, like a PDF or a Word doc, go ahead and email that to us just because you can't upload it on the online survey. And that's the end of me talking at all of you. So now is time and we'll go through the chat. Andy, Tracy, Jane, and Chris are all online with me. Thank you for helping out. Andy and Tracy will help with the chat. But then if you want to raise your hand, you can use that function on Zoom and we'll unmute you if you want to ask a question or share a thought verbally. If you want to do that, we just ask you not to speak for more than 2 minutes, just so everybody has a chance to speak. Um, and we're scheduled to be here till 1, but if there's a lot of questions and thoughts, then we'll try to stay on as long as we can. Okay,